Hi there. Thank you for joining once again for this week's podcast. This is the Revival Center AG Churches podcast, which we have every week. And this is the fourth episode that we have. And we are featuring the guests that we had for an earlier episode, Ricky and Biola from Hyderabad. And in the last episode, in the previous podcast with them, we looked at individual contributions. We wanted to see what it would take to hear the words, good and faithful servant, at the end of time when we stand before our Maker. In this podcast, we want to look a little more deeper into their initiative, especially drawing inspiration from the Bible verse, the Bible reference that we see in Romans chapter 16, verses 19. So, if you haven't seen the first episode, I would encourage you to go ahead and see that first because you'll get a lot of insight that will set a lot of context for this episode and what we are looking into. In that, we see how Ricky and Biola, they saw the green light in starting their respective initiatives, what they saw from God, how they prayed about it, and how the idea was conceived and how they acted upon it, and what takes they have or what bites they have to give for anyone who's also looking out to start out on such an initiative of their own. In this, we will be looking at the three organizations they're part of. Ricky is part of the whole shebang, his own digital marketing agency, and he's also running a movement. He's fronting a movement called Outcast. And Biola, she's a head chori of, at an institute, and she's also running her own NGO called Shop for Asha. So let's speak with them. Thank you once again, Ricky and Biola, for joining us. And also at the same time, I think we can get straight into the initiatives that you are working with, especially. I myself am a consumer of Outcast content, and I have found myself to be encouraged and inspired by it all the time. So I see that there's a cohesiveness, there's a consistency by which what you're delivering, what you're churning out. So how do you maintain that quantity level? Are you working on a monthly basis or on a weekly basis? How do you ensure that regularity?
Okay, so I think for us, we definitely don't, as a team, we don't believe in forcing content. We believe in creating content for the moment, but not forcing content for the moment. Sometimes what happens is when we are too busy in saying we need to put one post today because we have 5 days a week, we've decided to post 5 days a week. When we do that, we miss out an opportunity on something else that we could have seen because we're like, oh no, there's a post ready for Wednesday. So let's not think about any other idea. It's anyways done and dusted. You're not thinking about what other ways to, contribute. At the same time, we also believe in the power of resting,
Right.
because we as a team, like at least me myself, I've been exhausted. I've reached a place where I hit a burnout when I was constantly making content. So I had to learn the hard way where I know it's okay to not put so much content because at the end of the day, I would rather have one powerful content than five mediocre content. So, having said that, creating content constantly is important if you want to be connected with your audience. Now, if you're not being in touch with them, when you come back, better be sure you have something big for them to like suddenly listen to you. It's like let's say a film actor taking a break from from acting, and so when he comes back, the anticipation is high, and when he doesn't deliver something good, your his fan base drops.
Right.
In general, I'm just giving just
Yeah.
a general example here, but that's exactly how it is because the more you make your audience wait, the expectation constantly builds.
Yes.
So when the expectation builds, make sure you're delivering it. So and most of the time, this is what happens. Our reason for not creating constant content regularly is we always live in this ideology, at least when it comes to the Christendom. It's okay because the church, not so important to put content. But I think we need to consider our responsibility to create content from the church or as a Christian more than what we do for our work and our careers, because I think that's a responsibility that is divine here, and that is a responsibility that is very just meant for as long as we're on earth. That is your work.
Right.
But when you're talking about divine responsibility, that you're talking about impact that can remain for from a time where you may not be alive, but somebody else is being impacted by that one content. Because once you put anything on the internet, even if you think you deleted it, It's somewhere on the internet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So the power of putting content online is there. So I don't think we should take it for granted. At the same time, I don't think we should force yourself. So I think balance is good. Balance is the best way to create content. Yeah.
Sure. And just to clarify for those who are listening to us, this content includes cards, they include posts, anything else you would add to that? Videos?
Yeah, they include anything. For example, they include products you're building. They include solutions you're driving. They include social media posts. They include sermons. They include like all the possible ways to. For example, this podcast itself. This is a constant driver for you. You are creating content. So this is that thing. How often are you able to do it? Because the starting is easy, staying consistent is hard.
Right. Right.
Right? So our objective has to be staying consistent. Because there are so many people around you who are around us who are great at, hey man, let's do this, let's start it. But then when they start it, it's hard to stay consistent. So our objective is to stay consistent. Even after 100 days of no content, come back. It's okay to come back. Because it's okay to forgive yourself, saying it's okay, I haven't posted in a while, and don't give up on that.
Right.
Come back.
Right. That's good to know. And how do you ensure the quality of what you are producing when you are doing this consistency? What kind of checks and fixes that you have? Either of you, if you can comment on that.
For me, I think by God's grace, I'm blessed to have friends who are part of our Outcast core team, who come from very different backgrounds. Whether it's your denomination of Christianity itself, we have people from over 5-6 denominations within our team who love each other and have come from different backgrounds. So every time we post a content, I make sure it's checked by these people. Now there are definitely if let's say out of 5 people, let's say one person may disagree. But there are two things in this situation. One is, you as a leader, you need to know when to make that decision and take the brunt of the decision. That is, you're going, if the post doesn't do well, and the one person who said don't do this, he can always come back and say, I told you not to do this. So you have to be ready to take the responsibility of that.
Right.
But at the same time, it's good to have other people share their thoughts, know that they're thinking like this, so that even if you're stubborn, or if you feel like, no, this has to go out there, there is a reason why this is meant to be online, and if someone's finding that offensive in some way or the other, you are already prepared to what response to give them and how to respond to them with love and not with anger. And so I think, because we've had in Outcast, we've had posts which is offending people from different age groups and school of thoughts.
Right.
And sometimes the offense comes from uneducated place. That means they're not knowing why they're offended, because it's so easy for us to take something without knowing the full context, right? So I think we have to be ready to respond to them, saying, why are you offended? What is the best way? What can we do to solve this, for you? And then we sometimes it's good to take your post down. And it's okay, take it down. If it's good, if it's hurting 10 people and 100 people are getting it, but for that 10 people, sometimes God will definitely nudge you and say, I mean, that's the difference. No? That's the difference being a content creator and being a Christian content creator. You have the Holy Spirit who is guiding you when you're a Christian content creator, who's telling you, don't do this.
Right.
And if that is not there, then there's no difference between both of us. We're just creating content. And how is that making any difference?
Right.
Yeah.
That helps to know. And, since you're fronting this movement, you have structured this as a movement. Have you come up with, or are you planning to come up with any kind of framework that would guide others also? A sort of guidebook which, allows someone to start on these initiatives to think, okay, this is how I need to structure my content. If I'm, working, if there's a secular aspect to it, I should make sure that it does not stray from the message, how it can be formed on biblical principles, how it needn't touch on something that's controversial, and how you publish. So is there a framework that you might, propose, or is something that you may have considered at some time to guide people who are doing this?
So I think when you create content, if you want it to make impact, don't be afraid of controversies. Because controversies change the way people see the world. I'll give you a simple example. For a long time, playing electric guitar in church was probably looked down upon or frowned upon. You know, so for somebody to one church to suddenly start playing electric guitar, allowing electric guitar on stage, rock music. You know, you have people who are going to come and give you like responses saying it's wrong and all these things. You know, but they don't see the heart behind it. You know what I mean? So that was a controversy, and that there was a leader who was willing to take that step to deal with that controversy. But the fruit happened. Today, a lot of people have changed their mindset. I'll give you another example. Going online, a lot of people saw. I'll give you a simple example. When television came into existence, 40 years the church didn't go to the TV. As in, they didn't do anything Christian on TV because they said it's a devil's box, it's an idiot box,
Right.
it's a sin. So what happened is when the church came in, we were 40 years late to even be part of culture. When I say because we are supposed to be people who are driving force of the culture.
Right.
But what happens is we are trying to keep up with culture to even tell them, hey, listen to us.
Right.
So when you are in controversy, there has to be one person or somebody. That's when you need to be a leader. You need to be a thought leader. You need to be someone who's willing to shape. You need to be a giant slayer. And sometimes a giant is within our community. You know, it's not a people. It's the school of thought. So we need to change that. Like for example, wearing jeans in church, that was frowned upon a lot of times in India. And then that changed. Today nobody sees that as because again, there are so many things that are changing, and that controversy we should not be afraid of. So if you are shifting something, don't be afraid of controversy. Second thing is, that's your first framework. If you believe this is a God-led idea, don't be afraid of controversies because the hate is going to come, no matter what you try. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Second thing is, always have a group of people who are disagreeing with you, or rather better than you. Take what you need, throw what you don't need. But again, allow the Holy Spirit to drive that from you. Because if you don't let that, you'll only puff yourself with more and more, saying, I know better, they don't know what they're talking about. And then you start doing what you want to do. And that'll only ruin you in a long run. Third thing is, this is a very simple hack I follow. Is the hardest thing for us to do as content creators to stay consistent. So every time, let's say I decided to start a podcast. Today I'm free. Today we have a team. Our team volunteers are available. Right now we're doing the 4th episode of this thing.
Yes,
Okay, now we're in the 4th episode. Okay. Now let's assume next 5 days or next 5 months, all of a sudden the team is unable to meet. Okay, and you can predict that happening. What do? How do you? You just can't leave the audience abrupt. So you always have to predict. Okay, this probably because everyone's like, let's say lockdown is lifted, everyone's back to work. They may not be able to give this kind of commitment. Let's assume that. Okay, now if that is going to be a thing right now, let's suddenly, what do you do? How do you end a show? You always make it season 1 finale. You make a season 1 finale so that there is a closure, and you're giving them because you called it season 1, that means there is season 2. So that way, you're not too hard on yourself saying, I did 4 episodes and now I'm not doing anything. Because people will come and ask you, hey Benjamin, what happened in the next episode? I haven't seen anything from you. And you can't go around telling people, no man, we have other commitments, we're not able to do it. And it's bound to happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, because everyone here is serving in as volunteers, and as much as we want to serve with excellence, there is things like this that will come in the way. Life comes in the way, I would say. You know what I mean? So always predict that, okay, fine. Looks like the next few weeks we're not going to do. Try your best to get the team together for one last episode. Make it your season finale. End it. Any episode more than 3 episodes. 3 episodes can become 1 season, by the way. So if you have more than 3 episodes, don't feel ashamed to end your season there. So that's a good way to end a season. And then now when everyone's free, everyone's available, record 2 or 3 episodes that day. Keep it ready. So when you have a 3 episode, you have season 2 ready. So you see, these are small tricks. But instead of starting something, say we're doing this crazy thing, everyone's into it, and suddenly something happened. You know, life happens. You know, let's assume people in the team, you lose someone in your team. I'm just saying, you know, it's happened in many situations. What do you do then? Do you miss out on what you're called to do? You know, all those kind of things will happen. And you need to be ready, open to figuring out a way, because everyone's thinking about the Genesis, nobody's thinking about the Exodus. That is your ending of your project. How are you exit plan? What's your exit plan? Every time you make an idea, every time you make a campaign, time you make a product, think of its Genesis, think of its Exodus, think of how are you going to exit it. Tomorrow, in the next 5 years, this product is not going to be relevant. What am I going to do then? Think that way. Think long term. I mean, God thought long term. And a God who thinks long term. I mean, that's why I like the verse, for I know the plans I have for you. Right? And so God is someone who knows. And that's what makes him a great leader. So as a leader, if you don't know, you're not a great leader. And I believe you are a great leader, and you have it in you to know, because you have an attribute of God within you.
Right.
And that gives you the ability, and the spirit that works within you is something that's always nudging you and telling you, Benjamin, I think next week record 2 episodes. Because I don't think the next Saturday something's going to happen. It just happens.
Right.
And those things, divine moments, are something you don't take for granted. Don't use corporate formats on church. Use church formats in corporate. Because there is a power in divine. There is no guarantee in formulas, is what I believe. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I should be taking notes here. And Beulah, do you want to add to this? From the quality standpoint, from the quantity or the framework, as he said, about the guidance, do you want to comment on this?
I mean, I think Ricky has covered all of it, and then he has. But as Outcast, they have produced content like consistently for such a long time. And I think the formula or the spirit that led him to do it was something that made a huge difference. So I think he has definitely covered most of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So as you said, we are not engaging with mainstream culture. We have been closing ourselves into a room, and it's pretty much turned into our own personal echo chamber. We are telling each other what we want to hear, and there's a lot of judgment also happening on what is happening around us. Instead of engaging, we are we are pulling away, right? That's where, another question that comes up. We are still engaging in some ways, because we have professional jobs and we have a professional world in which we are part of, right? As for you, I understand you're part of the whole shebang. I mean, you are running the whole shebang, right? The TWS. So where do you draw the line? Because this movement, Outcast, and the whole shebang, their products, what they churn out, is more or less very similar to each other. So where do you draw the line between your professional work as well as what you provide in the Christian realm?
So one thing I've learned recently is you can't serve 2 masters at once. And that's very, as true as it can get. It's been a very huge revelation for me. And I think that is something you have to make sure you understand, that you're not serving 2 masters. So you get, everything that you do, there's always one priority, And I think the Outcast is my responsibility. TWS is just life. You know what I mean?
Right.
TWS is just, okay, after I finish 12th, I'm supposed to do degree. After I finish degree, I'm supposed to get a job. After I work for a few years, I decided to start a company. TWS is that. So if you look at TWS on that lines, it's a journey. There's no difference. It's not coming from a place of responsibility. It's coming from a place of, I want to do business. It's here's a way I know how to make money. Let's do it. But Outcast is a place of responsibility. So for me, if there comes a point where I have to choose between both of them, I have a clear answer where I would choose Outcast over TWS. Because Outcast is a responsibility. And responsibilities, as much as you want to run away from it, if God has placed you for it, there's no turning back. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and I think that is how I look at it. So, because I don't want to be that guy who is saying, I want to do something for the church, but still holding on to my job. When I say, I'm not saying quit your job. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we feel bad about it. If you're feeling bad, there is something that is nudging you, but you're so afraid to make that step. And the thing is, that's why good leaders are people who make decisions, not people who have great ideas. Good leaders are not people who have great revelations. Good people are people who do something about that revelation. So you are only someone who has revelation. I feel God is telling me to do this. But the step you take is what makes you makes it gutsy or makes it the risk factor is there.
Yes.
You know, and I think that is something that's where you need to prioritize. So the line I draw is, I mean, I don't see a line. Rather, I see this as a collaboration where I see that I'm learning about the world, about how I can be a witness there. At the same time, I'm unlearning about how I've done something to the world in a wrong way. No, I'm not looking at myself as superior, but I'm saying unless I know my audience, I can't reach my audience. And for me, TWS was that. And Outcast is my way, because now people know Outcast is a whole and soul Christian product. So if I go to someone who doesn't believe in God and I talk about Outcast, he's not interested. But if I talk to him about TWS, he's interested. You see, I have an avenue, but I also have, so that learning from there, I can take it and improve and make my product better, whatever the product is,
Right.
however you're trying to reach out to them. It's like going out there and seeing that, okay, this language of this people group only speak Malayalam. So if I go to them and speak to them in English, it's not going to work. I have to speak to them in Malayalam. You know, you understand their language.
Yes.
So that's the thing I would say.
Right. What about for you, Biola? Like how you draw the line between being the HOD and running shop for Asha?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Ricky said was completely right, of learning something and putting it. Now, I wasn't just in the teaching field. I also worked as a designer for other brands in Hyderabad. And then I went back to the teaching field. Now, all this learning, what I did in this period. Now, when I was a designer for a brand, I was conversing with customers on a daily basis. I could see, like, okay, fine, Hyderabad, like after a year of working, I knew that this kind of clothes works for customers in Hyderabad. Now, even though I was not consciously doing it because it was my job, like he said, it is something that you have to do for life, but subconsciously God was teaching me all this, right? Sometimes we feel like, why God, why are we doing this when we know this is our calling? But sometimes God takes you through this process to learn something over here so that he can use that learning for something bigger in your life. And I have personally seen that. Now, when I used to work in my first brand, I used to for the organizer, I was like, what am I doing here? I can do so much more. And I think all of us have had that questions like, God, why have you placed us here? But I know for a fact that subconsciously or somewhere God is teaching you. Like right now, even though I'm creating products for my own brand, it's somewhere connected to what I've learned, through this. Even when I teach fashion, now I am learning theory every day. I'm interacting with students who are similar to my customers every single day. So I feel when you're in the corporate and in the world, it helps you stay up to date of what the world needs. Sometimes when you're too focused on being a Christian, doing everything for Christian, you sometimes are ignorant of what the world requires. But when you have both avenues, you have to keep an open mind to, okay, fine, this is who I am going to speak to, or this is who is my end consumer, or if I can put it that way. But if you're too focused in one community of people, you are forgetting of what the actual world be.
Yeah.
That is why God has placed us in the world.
True.
He has not placed us just to be, happy in our community, do what. And sometimes the church can become like that. We are always focusing on we want what we, but our goal is to take this and bring it here, and take this and bring it here. It can be a collaboration of both sides. And that is why I feel now, even though I joined, Asha Jyoti full time, there was a reason, I was fully convinced that I want to leave. And I was just a teacher, but they pushed me and said, you become a HOD, but stay with Hamstick. At that point, I was like, why? I don't think I can handle 2 jobs. But now when I'm working, I am understanding, okay, fine. Because I'm conversing still with students, because I'm conversing, with the faculty that is teaching students in Hyderabad, I'm still staying up to date. So sometimes you might feel, why am I doing this and why am I doing that? But God has a plan for everything that you do. And it has to be a collaboration and a learning where you take one thing from the other, like from the worldly culture, you put it back to the Christian culture and vice versa. Because then it will help us also as a Christian community grow.
Wonderful. That's good to hear. Can we hear further about Shop for Asha, the process that you take, when you're building out your products and supplying it?
Yeah, definitely. So Shop for Asha, so basically Shop for Asha is a brand for today's people. It's for the youth, it's for everybody. We want it to be, we don't want it to be a charity brand. We want it to be a brand that is relevant for the youth today. So when I'm creating products, I'm very, 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 mindful of what Hyderabad wants today. So I'm first doing my research of what my customers are willing to wear today. So that is my first step of understanding what my customer wants. But then again, my goal is Asha Jyoti, because all income will go towards Asha Jyoti. So that is why when I'm designing my products, I'm trying to connect it to what Asha Jyoti is all about. Let me just explain how I developed my print. So that will give everybody like a clear idea of how I relate both together. So there are kids and there are women who are at Asha Jyoti. Now there are maybe...
And just to clarify, Asha Jyoti is, for the sake of our audience.
So Asha Jyoti is an organization started by my parents. We support, orphaned and semi-orphaned kids. We give them a home. We give them good English medium education. We support single moms or who cannot stand up on their feet by giving them employable skills training like tailoring, beautician, computer basics. So this helps them stand on their feet and later support their own children. It's basically an organization that mainly, of course, there are various other aspects, but our main goal is to empower, the vulnerable kids and women of our society, and how we can show God's love to them and then bring a change about through that process.
Yes.
So that is Asha Jyoti. Now, as an organization, Asha Jyoti has to start becoming self-sustainable because we cannot keep depending on, funds or asking people for money. So we create income generation projects. Now we have, Asha Books, where, we sell Bibles, we sell truckloads of Bibles on a monthly basis to some of the biggest, bookshops in India. So these are income generation projects that help us support Asha Jyoti as an organization. So Asha Jyoti, the main concept, it's self-sustainable. Now, Shop for Asha is another income generation project for Asha Jyoti. So it's a brand, and a fashion brand that we want it to be relevant for everybody, like for the youth of today, but it's also an income generation project for an organization like Asha Jyoti. So coming back to my process, now, like I said, how I create the print so that it's relevant for my customers, but it also makes sense. So like I said, we have employable skills training for women in our organization. Now these women are learning beauticians and they create mehendi designs. Okay, so I have taken mehendi designs that they have created, recreated those into, very, very relevant prints for the women of a society, created fabrics out of it, and then created like dresses, gowns, shorts, that women of today would want to wear. So when you're buying a Shop for Asha product, you're buying a trendy product for yourself, but you're also helping support the woman, and the product by itself is also designed or inspired by the woman that you are supporting. So that is the entire concept. So I'm learning what my customer wants, but I'm also making sure by my product it's very very relevant and people know the cause why they are buying the product. So that is the small process I followed, and most of my products that I create in Shop for Asha, I try to bring that balance between what the customer wants and how I can bring it. Now even kids drawings, now I've actually taken drawings that our kids have created, like they must have created an aeroplane or a puppy, and we digitalized it and created it on our t-shirts. So, and it's actually slightly written, drawn by whatever,
Right,
Kiran.
right.
So when a person is buying this t-shirt, he knows I'm buying it, but the money is going to support a kid like that. So, that's the process I follow and how we create our product. But I think you should always know what your customer wants before you start even creating these kind of products.
Oh, this is very beautiful insights, Biola. I mean, because we always think of, causing this effect and the funding from a donation perspective. We don't, I'm definitely sure there are such organizations who are trying to, have their own revenue generation, but we often miss out that we can, if we put in the effort and we put in the brains behind it, and of course, allow us to be guided by God, we can have something that is self-sustained, something that takes care of itself, right? So these are really beautiful insights. In fact, I just remembered, the Apostle Paul himself, he came from a wealthy family. He had a trust fund in modern terms, what we would call it, but he sought out a living for himself, and he stayed among those also who were taking a living for himself. He funded his own mission campaigns, and that is something, self-sustained. I think that is the kind of exhibit, or that's the kind of testimony that God wants to see from us, that is pleasing to God. So this is a very beautiful insight, Biola. Thank you so much for sharing. And when we speak about the excellence standpoint of things, we notice that a lot of governments, a lot of companies are starting out in a process of building a center of excellence or a competency center in-house. Now, whether the leadership teams of these companies or organizations know what a center of excellence actually means is another thing. But we do know that if there is a center of excellence and if it's done properly, can yield big results. Even here also, if I wouldn't be wrong if I say that here at Revival Center AG Church, we are also striving to build a robust center of excellence where we can be serving the community, not just in every way, but in different facets or different aspects, multiple angles. We are brainstorming about how the possibilities are, how one can contribute to the best of their skills and abilities. And if you look up based on the research that you can find out, a center of excellence basically is something that provides thought leadership or direction, something that pioneers its own processes and technologies, something that establishes the best practices and propagates it, and also provides support and education. That's how the propagation side of things. So, Ricky, from your perspective of fronting this movement of Outcast, do you feel that you are building a center of excellence, or are you already there? Are you working towards that?
I think we're working towards that. I would not say we're already there. But also we are also trying to explain ourselves what excellence means. That's the hard part. We are trying to make sure we understand that excellence means what it means. For example, a lot of us misunderstand excellence for perfect. And one thing I realized is there's only one thing that can be perfect, and that's God. So what happens is, in striving for excellence, we strive for perfection and we miss out on excellence. And that is what brings a lot of disappointment. That's what brings out a lot of roadblocks to whatever we do. Like, for example, let's assume we created a product, but somebody else created a product better than us. We're always going to say that they're going to compare. But if we made it with excellence, we believe our product because that's the best of our abilities we made it with, because of our resources and stuff like that. So I believe excellence is something we are ought to be striving for, because biblical. The word, this again comes from Romans 16:19, which says, "Be excellent in what is good," and that's biblical. And I think that is something we are supposed to be striving for. But in that process, let's not look for perfection. So I think even as a team, we want to be an excellent service provider, but not be perfect. Because if you're perfect, we reached a roadblock. That means this is a perfect product. There cannot be something better than this. But when we create an excellent product, there's always room for improvement. And I think that's the power of the word excellent, right? And I think we all should strive for it. And I think that's why we need to we need to understand any product we create, any program we create as a church, any event that we want to do as a church. Let's do it with excellence, and and be okay with the fact that power went off just 5 minutes before we wanted to go live.
Yes.
But we did it with
Yes.
excellence. That's not on us. But if we were striving for perfection, we'd be disappointed. We'd have hate within the team. We'll
Exactly.
get anger.
Yes.
There'll be blame games. There'll be gossip. There'll be so much differences that is being disrupted because why? We were striving for perfection, not for excellence. So that is the difference and is what we look at it. So, and if we create a show and if power goes out 5 minutes before the show, and it's not on us because we gave our excellent and the best of our ability, God is good, praise God. It's meant for power to go. And we're going to be okay as a team. So I think that's the power of us being excellent rather than being perfect. So I think that's what we strive for as Outcast. And we're not there. We will get there because we're humans. We get anxious. We want our product, every product to be a hit, every idea to get 50,000 shares or whatever. That's what we want, but it's not going to happen. So I think that's what we're doing right now. So
That is so relatable, Ricky, because whenever we start on something, we look at our flaws and then like, okay, this is not going to happen with us. We are looking at the perfection. That's good because it's good that you're separating perfection and excellence. And it is excellence towards which we should be leaning towards, not perfection. Because as you said, God is the only one who's perfect, and we cannot, we can't get there with our own efforts and our own wits or whims and so on. Another question I wanted to ask is, if you look within the realm of Christianity, and basically in all other organizations or all other realms as well, there's a change of guard that's happening. So all along, the baby boomers and Gen X has been running the show, and millennials, Gen Y, we have entered the workforce. We have been in the workforce for a while now, but we are slowly, taking up positions of leadership, positions of accountability, and some of us are taking it up. Some of us just wake up in the morning and find ourselves in that position, right? So, what are your thoughts about this? About us? What role that we can play, or and as a follow up to that question, do you see any difference between how we would do it and how the old guard would do it? So,
firstly, I think the difference is there. There will be a difference, but it comes from a good place. For example, if people like me, who's a millennial, am willing to step into leadership towards a problem I see in the future or the problem I see now, it's because somebody was willing to step down and understand my problem and teach me through that. And that credit goes to the baby boomers and the Gen X, because somebody was willing to say, Ricky would probably be someone who's inclined to listen to music. So I'm a guitarist. I love electric guitar. So imagine if the church decided there's not going to be electric guitar, I don't think I'd be where I am today, because I started my service in church playing electric guitar. I loved playing electric guitar. I volunteered as a church for almost 12 years while I playing electric guitar. So now that is where I was churned, and somebody fought for me. Somebody said, no, why not? Because again, I come from a conservative background, so for them, it's quite a battle to suddenly say. And then I started playing secular music, and there was somebody who supported me to that process and helped me learn about that world, And so everywhere I saw a Gen X or a baby boomer who was willing to support me. And that is why I was able to see their leadership, and I'm able to step in and say, I want to be that for my future. I want to be that person. At the same time, there are gaps I know they can't fill for them, because there's a season for them as leaders. And I think there's a season for us as leaders. For example, if you see Gen Z, okay, the Gen Z's, this is again based on certain studies, and there was a study, and I learned this from Global Leadership Summit, and one thing they said was Gen Z, they love to know the spoiler of a movie before watching the movie. Whereas a millennial, we want to watch the movie and see the spoiler. You know what I mean? So if you want to talk to a Gen Z, tell him that this movie may hero will die. He'll watch that movie. So but if you want to talk to me and if you tell me hero will die, I'm like, Arey yaar, I won't watch this movie anymore. I know the plot of it. You know what I mean? But so that is the power. So now if I'm talking to a Gen Z, I need to understand his rhythm. I need to understand his pulse. Gen Z is someone who is big on social cause. For example, the Gen Z will be fighting for planet saving our planet. The Gen Z will be fighting for social activism. The Gen Z is very conscious about what they eat. The Gen Z is very conscious about environmental littering. That's their mindset. Whereas millennials, we are not. Gen Zs are better savers. Millennials are not good savers. Gen Z, if you give him 500 rupees to buy chocolate, he will only use 100 rupees, he'll save 400 rupees. Whereas a millennial say, buy chocolate, I'll say, I need more money, I need 600 rupees chocolate. You see, there's a whole different kinds of people group. And for us, we need to understand that pulse. And for us, our baby boomers and Gen X did their best to try to understand it. And I think it's our responsibility to do our best to try to understand them, to try to understand their pulse, their taste, because they are the future. And I think if we as leaders don't step up now to understand them, I think it's going to be very difficult to be someone who's influencing culture with the kingdom in mind.
Right. That helps a lot. And I think we have covered a lot of aspects from the excellence standpoint and what your initiatives are. I would ideally ask you to give a message on what your interpretation of Romans chapter 16, verse 19 is on being excellent in what is good. And if you have, a quick summary, something that you can throw to people who are listening to us, that would be great. If you could share the message.
Okay. Now, I think for me, that verse applies to me in all aspects of my life. One thing I like what Martin Luther King says. He says, you don't become a Christian shoemaker by putting a cross on the shoe. You become a Christian shoemaker by making the shoe with excellence. And that's what our responsibility is. We being Christian is not saying Jesus is Lord sticker on the door of our house. We being Christian is making sure when we rent a house from our owners, we make sure that house is clean. We being Christian make sure that when we use a washroom, I'm giving you this, I learned this from Pastor Brian Houston from Hillsong, and he said, Christians should be those people when we use the washroom in public places, when we leave the washroom, the next person should be praising how clean the washroom is. And I was like, wow, that's weird. That's a weird example to say. But again, that's excellence in the small things. Because we being Christians, we need to not be the people who are littering on the floor, because these are small things. That's why I say I like the verse which says, be excellent in what is good. It doesn't say be excellent in big things. It doesn't say be excellent in and good is vast as a subject. Good is such a broad spectrum of things. Whether it's eating healthy, whether it's waking up on time, being on time, honoring time, all these things, excellence is required. And I think that is what God expects from us because that reflects Him. God is always on time. Are we on time? One thing I saw, this worship leader, I will not mention his name, and somebody was introducing him on stage before going on stage, and they said, sorry we are late to start this program, but we are Indians. And this worship leader came on stage and says, it's a shame that we take pride in starting late because we're Indians. We need to be people who follow kingdom timing, and we can't celebrate that, we are Indians, so we'll always be late. And this, and when he said that, it hit me so hard. It's like, wow, that's so true. I need to be someone who's making sure if someone asks me to meet me at 5:30 in the evening, I'm there by 5:25. I don't want that person to wait for a minute. And that is excellence in the small things. I think once we have the excellence in the small things, even the world follows this pattern. The funny thing is, I saw this army officer says, if you want to be a good officer in the army, start by making your bed every morning. And I said, now if you look at that, that is straight taken out of the Bible, which says, be excellent in what is good. And again, so the world follows the biblical pattern, and that is based on, anything good, and, it comes from the Lord. That's understood, right? And I think that is something, if we start putting efforts towards, I think we will be able to see the reflection of God making an impact in people. Like people see God through our lifestyle, through our works, through our actions, through our words, through our dressing, through our language, through the way we behave with people. So many things. But I think that's the power of being excellent in the good things of life. Yeah.
Wow, this is a lot of bites for me, a lot of learnings for me personally. It's very thoughtful, all these insights that you shared, and I'm really hoping that who all are listening to us are inspired. They have understanding, at least they have awareness that there's such a thing called be excellent in what is good. So yeah, that is all the time that we have for this week's podcast. Giving our thanks to Ricky and Biola for coming again, and also if you have any questions to ask, you can put it in the comments. We will try to get them answered for you. And also, I would like to extend a thanks to brother Nidin Sebastian for arranging Ricky and Biola to come to feature on our podcast. We will see you next week. Take care. God bless.